Alright, so today I'm at a new job, new project. The homeowner wants me to pull back this screen, the lower section of screen, and install this cedar over here. I'm going to cut it up into 2x2s to make balusters out of it. And then I'll install it in here to create a railing effect. Now I'll back prime all the end cuts, and then I'll paint it to match this green color. He has this green on hand, so I'll easily be able to match it. Then I'll just need to retrim some of this lattice that he has on the outside. So a little bit of detail finishing work, and I might even be able to reuse the screen. I'm not sure yet. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I just marked out a couple of the openings, and I need 7 balusters per opening, and they're only like 28 inches tall. So I've got these 8-foot 2x4s. I was going to rip them basically to get 2x2s. So that means I can get 2, 4, 6 out of each one. I'll just cut them at 32, and then I'll trim the length later once I have it all primed. All I have to do is prime the end grain, and I'll be good to go. Alright, so this job started off, I got way too much of this 2x4 cedar. I thought I would only get 2 pieces per 2x4. 4 pieces per 2x4, but I actually in the end could get 6 because of the height. So it started off by me culling through the cedar to pick the best ones that weren't damaged. Then right here, I'm going through and just cutting them in thirds. So I just ripped them all to 32 inches. And as I stated, I have way too many, so I ended up taking all the excess, which are the ones that are inside the porch area. I took those back to the store. So it gave me a little bit of leeway to pick just the best ones. So once I had them all cut, then I had to rip them all down. I just wanted to rip them down so they were, 2 by square. And I have some problems with this table saw where I broke it at one time and it has a locking piece, but it just never seems to be 90 degrees square. But I could usually force it and get it very close. So here I'm just kind of working through my best way. I ended up doing that where I would pull the difference, so I do it all in one cut. And I just started speeding it up here. I wanted to show you all the steps in this process because a lot of people don't realize how tediously difficult it is to do actual wood on an exterior project. You can see it was so much dust I had to switch over to mask, and then I just decided I would go full safety mode, so I put on the glasses and the ear protection. So I just ripped all these boards to get all the 2x2s that I needed. Honestly, I forget how many it was, but I think it might have been 72. I can't remember exactly, but it was a fair amount of 2x2. So I got them all ripped there, and you can see, God, look at all the dust. Okay, so then the next step was sanding them all. I started off with this, I think it was a 220, and I just wanted to see what it did. Then I switched over to the 150. It might have been 150, and I switched to 100. And so I just, as I said before, I wanted to show you all the steps here, so I just sped it up a lot. I filmed it at 60 speed, and then I sped that up 4 times, so this is like 240 times normal speed. So I would sand each face, and number 1 to get the tool marks off from the table saw, but then number 2 I wanted to try to get all 4 surfaces smooth before primer. And then I kind of rounded the edges, that way the paint would hold well. So I sanded all these 2x2s. And here I am, I got some exterior primer, this Valspar. I think I've said it in the past, but I'm not a huge Lowe's fan, but they do have this Valspar, and it is pretty good primer. It's almost tinted, so I really use that. So here I'll start the throttle up here in a moment, and you'll see me basically prime all these. I primed one face and the end grain, and then I will come back later, you'll see, where, there we go, there's throttling up here. So I'm going now full speed. And it got to a point where I had too many out, so I would have to start moving them indoors. But here I'm picking them up and painting the other 3 sides once the first side had dried enough that I could lay it on its face. Here I'm kind of taking them inside. You see me stacking them in there on boards. I just needed more room. So I would do some and then move them back inside. Here I'm shifting them from the one table to the other, and then eventually I move them inside. And but again, as I was saying earlier, most people don't realize how incredibly tedious it is to do painted work, because you really need to have it all pre-primed and back prime all your cuts and to really ensure that it'll last. Caulk and fill all your holes, and probably in the end it would have been better to just go ahead and get number 1 2x2 cedar, but the labor was cheaper. I guess my price is free, so I guess I can tell myself that it's cheaper to do it this way, but it was a lot of labor. Here I'm just sanding them all like a light sand with 220 just to knock down the scuff from the primer. Okay, now here I'm starting to put a coat of paint on. The homeowner had this paint and it looked so close, and I put it on and I was trying to hold it, and maybe it was just the light, but I ended up pulling this other paint out and I said, they look very, very, very close, but they're slightly different. So in the end, I just used the paint that I had the first time there. I thought maybe putting a second coat on it would make a difference. So then I wrapped up the roller and I said, well, let me try another roller and let's see how that looks. So I tried this paint and I rolled it, and honestly I could not really tell the difference. So I just basically made the call to say forget it, and I went back to the original paint. And now I'll just start painting all these boards. So I put one coat just like I did with the primer, and I would let that dry out, and eventually I would move them inside just like I did with the priming, just so I could get more room. I just really didn't want to. So I believe in this whole day I got all one coat on them. I might have even I think I did 2 coats on one surface, and then I let it dry overnight, and then I brought them all out here and stacked them really tight, and then I was going to go ahead and paint all the other 3 sides. So I bought out some of these boards so I could set them up on to try to minimize the contact so it wouldn't really tear the paint. These turned out pretty well. Even though the cedar was number 2 cedar, so it did have knots, they turned out pretty nice. And as far as on the surface, most people would not even know the difference. Certainly number 1 cedar would be beautiful, but I think they were like $20 an 8-foot stick. And in my mind I was thinking I would only get 2. But in the end I was able to get 3. So it might have been more cost effective if I had just went with the number 1 cedar and wouldn't have to do any milling. That took me about 5 hours to get everything milled and the sanding. I guess I would have had to maybe sand them lightly with the primer coat, but it would have saved a lot of time. Here I'm just moving them inside, had them storing, and there's a shot of them all packed inside as tight as I could get. I even had to set them up on the horses there in the corner just so I could get them indoors because it was supposed to drizzle that night. So we're starting to install them now. I basically use trim screws and just basically trim them in and then fill them with filler. There's a shot. You can see it all inside. So it gives the look of like a railing, and it looks so close to the original paint. No one will know the difference. So I would have to start out by getting some marks and then pulling marks on the top, then setting them all, and then coming back and filling them. So here you'll see all the exciting footage of me. There you can see me back priming the top end of, I had to do, some of them I had to cut, so I would kind of measure and cut them within a tolerance length, and some of them would be a little shy. I didn't want them to be too tight because it would damage the original paint. And I did that with one, and it kind of scraped the original paint, and I was trying to avoid that. So as I got further along, I realized it would be better to go from the left to the right. There I'm just filling them all with the filler. And when I went from the left to the right, it minimized how much of the right angle attachment I would have to use. I would only have to use the right angle on the very last one. So I would get them all installed, get them all filled, and I'm almost positive that was a Friday when I finished installing them all. Because the homeowner was having a party, and I remember people were asking about what was the white filler, you know, but I don't think they realized that it wasn't finished yet. So here I started to remove all the lower lattice, and the original thought was I was going to try to save the screen, but I got towards the end of this one side and I realized that the screen was just, some of it was damaged. So I made the call to go ahead and replace the screen. So you can see me kind of cutting the screen and then tightening up with some staples as best I could. And once I had it all removed, I'd set all the staples and nails, and then I had to go around and sand all the filler. So all the screws were done from the inside. So once I had it all sanded there, I'm starting to do the caulking. So I just caulk the top and the bottom, and I'd have to do caulking on the outside and on the inside. So again, very tedious. Certainly when it comes to using PVC or vinyl or you know, AZAC, whatever you want to call it, maybe, I don't know about FIPON, but certainly plastic or vinyl or AZAC or some kind of composite. The savings is all in the labor, because the products are very expensive. But to get this look with a vinyl or a plastic composite, I think you would have probably had to go to an actual railing. That would have probably been your best money bang for your buck. And then the problem becomes the color. Basically, you can only do white. Certainly painting, but then you add the maintenance. Here I'm putting the paint over the caulk, and really it kind of one-shotted. I'm sure some people might argue that you always need 2 coats, and I agree. But it looked fine, and the homeowner was fine with it. So we just settled on doing 1 coat. Okay, here I got all this pre-primed little 1/8" thick lattice. It was 1/8 by 1.5. So I just went ahead and put a coat on it, and then stored it inside so it could dry overnight. And brought it out the next day. I believe it was the next day, and put a second coat on it. Now I think it was later that same day. I think it was later that same day. I went ahead and put a second coat on it, then just tossed it back inside again. Here I'm just touching up the inside of the caulk lines. On the outside I did all 3 sides. Now I'm just doing the one inside face on the top and bottom. Okay, now I'm starting to cut out the screens, and it just wanted me to use just a staple, but surprisingly I was able to get it pretty taut. I really was apprehensive. I've always done a spline system, or like that screenies like I showed you in the previous video, but surprisingly this was able to get it pretty taut for just the staples. So I left some lattice, you can see where I left on, so I had to kind of tiptoe around some of it. Okay, here I'm starting to re-tack the lattice up. These are the new pieces, and I had made all these cuts, and then I would kind of touch it up with paint so it would last. I told the homeowner that I would touch up where it was some really glaringly damaged paint on the existing lattice exterior, but you know, I couldn't paint everything, and I think he understood that, and he said obviously once they have another touch up on the outside, then everything will be blended together. Here I'm just touching up all the nail holes from the hand nails, because I just hand nailed them with small penny nails. That way I was able to flush them. And here's the final product, and honestly it looks like it was always there. The paint matches almost identically. You can see on the top of the framing, the upper lattice, how it's obviously a different color, but this is especially on this side here, a side where the sun hits it, so it fades it very much so. But around the corner here, you can see again where it's faded, the difference in the corner there. And but once they have another opportunity to get it painted, then everything will look like it was originally done. And the homeowner was very happy. That was the look they were trying to achieve, and he had originally had someone come in that was going to do it with vinyl, and the cost was just exorbitant compared to my price. So here you can see it comes all around. On this side you can see it blends in very well because there's a lot less sun. So this was kind of a short project, But just I wanted to show you all the steps and show you every bit of it so you can see how laborious it actually is. There you can see some of the paint where I tried to kind of blend in and scrape some of the paint back. But so you just can see how laborious it actually is when you do something quality with painted wood. And this will hold up for a long, long time. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. If not, give me a thumbs down. But I appreciate the feedback, and I thank you again for watching.